On the other hand, Cohen writes, quote, "Father always thought that he had made a mistake in adopting the name Cohen instead of the name Garnett. And he thought I should not repeat the error." He also talks about, he doesn't talk about Jewish religious observance per se, but Cohen writes with great relish of the first deviled pig's feet he ate and his first taste of roast suckling pig. And Cohen was clearly self-conscious about the implications of having eaten these foods because he also tells a story about a breakfast between Governor Al Smith and Judge Joseph Proskauer, at which Cohen emphasizes that despite serving as chairman of the American Jewish Committee, Judge Proskauer ordered ham and eggs. He also, on the very first page of his memoirs, Cohen adopts the position of Dr. Felix Adler, who founded the Society for Ethical Culture, and Cohen states that all peoples are God's chosen people, apparently rejecting the notion of any unique role for the Jewish nation that Ruth talked about yesterday. He also emphasizes the influence Dr. Adler had on him and on his work in the New York County Lawyer Association and his lawyering views in general. In addition to questions about Cohen's view of his Jewish heritage, as we talked about yesterday, among the more successful and established Jewish lawyers, it wasn't uncommon to espouse and exemplify the same professional values favored by elite Protestants, as some put it, apparently including at times nativist attitudes directed at Jewish immigrants themselves. Auerbach quotes the remarks of one successful Jewish immigrant lawyer who in 1929 referred to attorneys who could not speak the King's English correctly, who by character, by background, by environment, by education, were unfitted to be lawyers. In light of the presence of these attitudes, even among some Jewish lawyers, the absence of such nativist rhetoric on the part of Cohen, who was born in the United States and enjoyed positions of prominence among the elite legal establishment. He was prominent in such establishments as the Association of the Bar of the City of New York, a much more elite body than the New York County Lawyer Association. His attitudes would appear to take on an even greater significance. Ultimately, though perhaps influenced in part by his own religious background, Cohen's approach to issues of ethnicity and natural origin appeared to be based in profound and fundamental aspects of his unique and more inclusive vision of professionalism. Just to close, and maybe appropriate for this setting, historians have long recognized that any attempt to evaluate the conduct of those who lived earlier through the lens of contemporary sensibilities presents a challenging, if not precarious, proposition. The Talmud reflects this difficulty in considering the biblical reference to Noah, as righteous in his generation. Commenting on the apparent superfluity and ambiguity inherent in the phrase, in his generation, the Talmud offers alternative interpretations. Some understand the verse as highlighting Noah's ability to maintain his righteousness despite the wickedness of the generation in which he lived. Conversely, others explain that Noah was righteous only relative to the wickedness that surrounded him, but that his own character would not have been particularly noteworthy, for example, in an age of Abraham, an age of greater moral sensitivity. Among the many notable aspects of the debate, it's interesting to note that even according to the latter position, that Noah was righteous only in his generation but would not have been particularly notable or stood out in Abraham's generation, the Torah nevertheless does not hesitate to praise Noah as righteous even in a relative sense. In light of the changes that have transpired in the legal profession in the course of the 20th century, corresponding to broader changes in American society as a whole, the rhetoric of the leaders of early 20th century professionalism strikes a discordant and disturbing note. On some level, it seems unfair to expect the organized bar to have overcome completely the anti-Semitism, nativism, classism, economic protectionism, and elitism that were so endemic to the society in which they functioned. Indeed, to the extent that many of these leaders recognized and combated the ethical problems that confronted the legal profession in the early part of the century, perhaps, like Noah, they too should be the subject of praise, if only in relative terms. Nevertheless, despite the possible appeal of such a position, it may be difficult to maintain in the face of the contemporaneous work of Julius Henry Cohen. Cohen embraced and promoted professionalism, but he expressed his views through a mode of discourse largely free of the vices that plagued the rhetoric of so many of his friends and associates among the legal elite. In fact, to the extent that Cohen's rhetoric was not entirely free of such attitudes, perhaps he would serve as a more apt analogy to Noah, as someone who was not particularly righteous, perhaps by current standards, but whose work is deserving of praise when evaluated relative to the society in which he lived. In any event, His articulation of his alternative vision of professionalism may serve as an indictment of the 20th century legal establishment and its failure to adopt a mode of discourse that would have served the goals of professionalism movement while maintaining its rhetorical integrity. Thank you.